What do you get when you combine a brand new challenge idea with an already overused comedic setup? This exact video. That's right, today I'm bringing you a new challenge I've been experimenting with a little bit to spice up my Total Warhammering, and I've got to tell you, it's a lot of fun. The rules are simple. You can only have one army and may only recruit heroes. But Praximus, I hear you ask, that is really simple. So simple, it's kind of boring. Well, maybe if you'd let me finish explaining, you might not think so. Relax. In this challenge, I will only be able to recruit Castellans plus the one demon smith which I begin the campaign with. I can only recruit additional heroes once for every 5 minor settlements I destroy and 1 for every capital settlement. The goal is to get a complete stack and then conquer the Black Pyramid of Nagash. We cannot raise the same settlement multiple times other than for experience points, even if different factions occupy it. This challenge is designed to be completed in a single session, but can easily take 2 or 3 depending on your difficulty settings. Now, I know I've already played the Chaos Dwarves, but I really love the Castellans despite their shortcomings. However, I don't think it would be appropriate to sell out our laissez-faire foundations just to spice up this revisited recital, so we're going to double down on the capitalism so hard that I can already hear the communists shaking in their oversized berets. That's right, we're going to teach you economics in this Warhammer challenge video. Believe it, Zatan starts this campaign of carnage with only one hero, his trusted pyromancer Liquid Zulu. Nobody embodies terrorizing the totalitarians and incinerating the Iron Curtain like this fireball fomenting filibuster. After our previous Chaos Dwarf content cleared out, we received some feedback indicating that building an empire on the back of violently oppressed slave labor was somehow incompatible with capitalism, so this time we're deleting our oppressive capital tower to recruit our first Castellan. Yes, I'm allowed to count destroying my own buildings. I literally made the rules. This introduces our interface. You can see in the top left corner the count until the next minor settlement grants us another Castellan, and on the top right our total army size. Sacrificing the granite spikes grants us 1/5 of a new agent, while sacrificing the Volary grants us 1 immediately, as it is a capital settlement for a total of 3 out of 20 units. Now it's time to get this show on the road. The ever-faithful Miaurio joins our retinue as we pounce upon our first adversary, Moxia of the Cathay tribe, guerrilla warfare style. Moxia brings a crew of marauders representing each of the 4 Chaos Gods to fight our measly 3 dwarves, forgetting that we have the willing to shoot you in the throat perk. Confident that in the face of such overwhelming numerical odds, our nascent challengers stand no chance, the Chaos Worshippers dogpile us like socialists discovering someone else's private property. Moxia squirms his way into the midst of the mosh pit, and suddenly 3 rabid dwarves are gnawing at him. He can't escape as Zatan, Zulu, and Miaurio dig their teeth in and refuse to let go. Only minutes into the battle and the enemy leader is running away crying. But can we overcome the yet copious confiscators? Demon Smith Zulu retreats, advances in reverse, fooling the enemy into allowing him to find a place to resume firing his grenade pistol into the Norskin marauders. The dwarves prove durable, and before long we secure our first victory of many. Having dispelled those taxation apologists' arguments with lead and logic, we easily proceed to crush the garrison protecting the Fortress of Eyes, and officially initiate our demolition detour. While we march our way over to Iron Storm, I should point out that since our faction isn't designed to be played without having any settlements, our army is going to be constantly taking attrition. I'm thinking about some rules to implement which might help alleviate it, but for now we're just going to spend a lot of time in the encamp stance. We're calling this enterprise our debut to guerrilla warfare due to our lack of vehicles and use of hit-and-run tactics. However, if you're looking for something a little bit more mechanically exciting, you had better check out today's sponsor, War Thunder. War Thunder is absolutely the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, featuring over 2,000 tanks, planes, helicopters, and even naval ships in dynamic, combined arms player versus player warfare. The vehicles span not only space but time, dating from all the way back in the 1920s to modern-day marvels like the Leopard 2. Whether or not I personally want to lock in with my headphones and get immersed, or just cause some chaos with a few pals, can determine which game I choose to play, and War Thunder covers both bases by letting you choose the immersion level that suits your playstyle and interests, which is one of my favorite aspects of War Thunder, which keeps me coming back. Every one of these vehicles is incredibly detailed and modeled down to their individual components, offering a highly immersive combat experience with functional damage to each individual component and crew member rather than simple hit points. Play free now on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation, and claim a large bonus pack by using my link included in the description below to access multiple premium vehicles, premium account, and an exclusive 3D decorator for your vehicles, plus much more. This offer is available for a limited time only. Speaking of no buildings, you might be wondering how I'm recruiting agents. Well, this challenge is going to require the use of the console commands mod, which enables me to spawn an engineer type agent whenever I wish. This is the best way to implement this challenge, short of making an entire mod. You'll just have to resist the urge to cheat. In an effort to please the Keynesians, we politely demolish Iron Storm and the Dragon's Crossroads, having been informed that this is the best way to invigorate the local socialist economies. Confusingly, this results in Cathay declaring war on me. Don't they know how many jobs I've just created? In fact, Kolek and the Tusked Sons both declare war now, and I wasn't even bothering them. Perhaps they're hoping for some economic enrichment of their own. Unfortunately for them, we're already just one settlement from another Castellan, so we'll just take the Snake Gate and be on our way. A not very small number of starvation enjoyers show up to protect their world-famous single rice paddy, and our mere 2 firearms simply cannot keep up with all the cannon fodder. Fortunately for us, Zulu is not shy about summoning words of wisdom so potent that they manifest as a giant flaming skull and immolate the emaciated masses. We simply need to hold out long enough for the communists to reconsider incineration as a method of dying. But luckily, Chaos Dwarves are hardy little buggers. Wave after wave of wannabe political commentators step forth to wrestle with our warriors of very low centers of gravity, but each blob is treated to a healthy dose of flaming wrath, realizing that they have no chance of overcoming our tankiness before the spells finish them off completely. The Cathayans retreat into the Snake Gate, and we declare victory. Despite the casualties we inflicted upon the enemy, we're now far too weak ourselves to safely assault the settlement without risking a challenge-ending casualty. So we're going to have to spend some time healing and give her another go. After spending a few turns camping in the ashen hinterlands of the eastern steppes, we make another attempt at the Snake Gate garrison, although now they've received help from a reinforcing dragon-blooded lord. Zatan is now riding atop his fiery bull Pegasus, which you would expect to be a major advantage from the last engagement. However, the massed ranks of peasant bowmen are horrifyingly capable of damaging this large but unarmored beast, rendering Zatan essentially useless in this new matchup. Zulu and Meow fight tooth and nail against the horde, which descends upon them while Zatan waits for an opportunity to participate. Unfortunately, even in the backwoods he is assailed by harassing peasants. Flaming skulls once again save the day as entire regiments are melted down and recycled into bottle caps, and Zatan finally spots an opportunity to disrupt the enemy. But as the battle drags on into the afternoon, it becomes clear that the enemy will not go down easily, and their badly scorched soldiers wear our health points down enough to effectively prevent us from besieging the settlement again. Alright, well, clearly this approach isn't working. The clever Cathayans are wise to our plans already, and are consistently keeping us wounded just enough to stop us from directly assaulting the settlement garrisons. Our strategy conference is cut short when Kolek shows up with a full stack of whacked out demons looking like a dad who just found the text you've been sending his daughter. Seeing no other option, we make a dash for the Dragon Gate, hoping that it remains undefended long enough for us to pass through it without incident. Now that we've got our first 5 minor settlements burnt out, we discovered Der Kralt managing the official Praximus Discord server from deep within the now liberated Cathayan Gulag. Now that we're in Cathay, it's time to put our rifles to good use and really show these commies how guerrilla warfare is done. This time, it's not Viet Cong, it's Diet Coke, because that's like American or something. While the defending armies are out looking for a grocery store that actually has groceries, we managed to raise Terracotta Graveyard, Wang Chang, and Nan Li without incident, leveling up plenty along the way. At this point, I realized that the Cathayans are really out of position, because even Nan Gao is unprotected. We approach the city and begin our first real test of this party's siege capabilities. The garrison defending Naval are not content to let us starve them out, which is good because we secretly take attrition while besieging, so we probably would have starved first anyway. This time, we have Zatan on foot and Zulu in the air, allowing him to move quickly to where spells are needed and away from any threats which might hinder him. With Miario and Dekrault in the woods, we simply need to distract them with Zatan while the snipers do their work. Unfortunately, Zatan's gyrating hips and fanciful footwork are somehow less attention-grabbing to the peasants than the two snipers firing molten lead off their foreheads, and they completely pass him by to attack the snipers. They are surprised to discover that Zulu can now summon tornadoes of flame by reading directly from Mises' human action from atop his soaring mount. Although the fighting wears down the sniper's health quite a bit, it isn't enough and the Cathayan garrison are left scrambling, running for their lives after the majority of their comrades are left lying well done on the battlefield. Naval was once the heart of Cathay's gunpowder and artillery production, but is now nothing more than a monument to our insatiable lust for profit. MRH Legacy is found hauling looted cannons into a cart from the ruined arsenal, and we take him along with us to put his firepower to use blasting holes in collectivistic logic. From our camp outside of ruined Naval, we have the opportunity to take the Snake Gate as well, since its defending army is now unaccounted for, but I know that on the other side of that Great Wall, Kolek and Kazag are both slavering at the thought of tasting our well-nourished capitalist bones. Now that we're officially in Cathayan lands, the local commissars waste no time in declaring their intention to seize our sacks of grain. We continue south and raise the Shrine of the Alchemist, hoping to soon reach Shang Yang and obtain yet another engineer for our infernal industry. Unfortunately, Kolek, Kazag, and Zhao Ming all show up at once using the superpowers of central planning. Just kidding, if this ambush was centrally planned, Kolek would be lost in the Empire somewhere and Kazag would have starved to death. Regardless, our hands are tied, and with the south blocked off, we have no choice but to take a different approach. That's right, this video is not going to be about Cathay the whole time. But before we can escape the eternally encroaching, emaciated enslavers, we engage in expedition to examine an eventual embarkation environment. The auto-resolve refuses to just let us have the Snake Gate, so we fight it manually. The Snake Gate has up to now caused us no shortage of headaches, and it is thus with great satisfaction that we scale the walls of the allegedly Great Bastion to set up a leisurely game of Duck Hunt. Conscripted warriors try to stop us from turning their battlements against them, but are chucked off the side like political dissidents in droves. Zulu blasts the defenders with such unrelenting fiery wrath that he accumulates the most kills by several orders of magnitude. Unable to maintain possession of the walls, the Cathayans are invited to a very, very long day at the range, while our capable snipers pick away at them until every last round is expended. By the time we have no choice left but to charge, the enemy's resolve simply shatters and we claim the settlement. Raising Snake Gate completes yet another set of 5 minor settlements, and thus another Castellan joins our posse. Barden Gorikson, the master tactician who enabled this mischievous campaign to even get off the ground by sharing his expert knowledge, despite the fact he'd never willingly associate with the filthy Chaos Dawi. Now we have only to reach the coast, and all hell is breaking loose as we travel, considering how even Greases is trying to get a piece of me. Provincial capital Po-May is looking rather plump and undefended, leaving us no choice but to plunder her precious pearls. Our demonsmith sits comfortably beneath the defender's walls where no projectiles can reach him, as he produces pillars of pyrotechnics and summons screaming skulls of scorching. While our now veteran warriors make quick work of the defenders atop the walls, the spells within bounce off the walls and corners. Being in such a claustrophobic space is a near-death sentence for any who attract the ire of a skilled pyromancer. This capital settlement quickly becomes nothing more than an oven for those who reside within it, which explains why they begin to make such a hasty escape. However, one regiment of renown fighting for Cathay is a real pain in the side and dishes out way more damage than we would have preferred due to its magical arrows. Once we realize the trouble they are causing, a flaming bull the size of a mobile home crashes volcanically atop them and brings a conclusive end to their interference. Despite the stragglers fighting fiercely to disrupt our invasion, the endless stream of precisely targeted lead overpowers their resolve and structural integrity until the day is ours. Tomei is Cathay's premier nightlife and notorious city of flaming passions, so it is no surprise that it is here that we discover AA practicing his craft, guiding the jubilant, love-lorning youths to their desired ends. Now that we're on a roll, let's take the Turtle Gate as well and head to Wei Jin. By now, the writing is on the wall and Lokir Felhart begins politely asking us not to liberate his loins. But before we can trouble the Dark Elves for their possessions, we must first rid ourselves of yet another Cathayan capital. Wei Jin feels confident about its defensive prospects due to the latest communist technology, a single balloon. It's no surprise that they possess sufficient hot air to keep it afloat indefinitely. We target a claustrophobic nook at the outer corner of their defenses, and sure enough, they swarm to meet our assault, resulting in an impromptu Chinese barbecue. Once the winds of Zulu's wisdom have sent the strangers scurrying for safety, we swiftly scale the sides, arrayed before us in a deliciously unobstructed thoroughfare. Our enemies fall in droves to our bullets. Archers try to pelt us from over some obstructions, but Zulu needs no line of sight to immolate them. Some uppity balloon decides to get involved and finds out a new and unfortunate definition of getting riddled. Finally, our compadres group up around a control point, which motivates the remaining Cathayans to launch a desperate attack, and in this final melee, they meet their end. 50 turns in, and we obtain our 6th Castellan, Sirio. Turns out he was with us all along in spirit. Now we fight our way to the coast where the Dark Elves are, and raise the city of the Shugengan on the way. We reach the coastal Hai Chai, which is inhabited by the Dark Elves of Lokir Felhart, who all have to die just so that we can fight someone new for a change. Lokir's Dark Elves stand guard in their ridiculous cone hats while Zatan scales the wall and runs right past them. His intention today is to distract the enemy while our sniper teams get into an advantageous position atop the battlements. This mostly works with the exception of a single group of elves who experience an extremely unpleasant visit. Once the Castellans are in position, their fury is boundless and the streets of Hai Chai are filled with a swarm of lead wasps. The Dark Elves are sensitive to having limbs blown off, and Zatan absolutely cannot goad them into returning to the sniper's kill zone. Zatan spends so long trying to get them to follow him back to our neighborhood that he accidentally kills them all single-handedly. Having no other choice, our sniper team moves into the town to begin claiming control points, fighting all the way to the town square. Dark Elven crossbows unleash unending volleys upon our troops, who are now out in the open, dealing a dizzying amount of damage from out of our line of sight. Fortunately, Stalin was not present to enforce his not one step back policy, and the Dark Elves chose to find somewhere else to live. With Hai Chai in our control, we're officially coastal, desperately trying to escape Cathay and breathe some originality into this video. But we will take attrition the entire time we're in the ocean without the ability to replenish, so we need to find an embarkation point closer to the sea lane which will take us to Lustria. We dig Captain Morgan out of the ashes of Hai Chai, where he had been interviewing the local politicians. We raise another settlement along the way, Jiju, and find the perfect port from which to abandon this collectivistic wasteland. Unfortunately, the port of Beichai, which is perfect for our escape route, is occupied by the enemy. Unwilling to simply let us leave in peace, the Cathayans have invested in cannons and rockets solely to be a thorn in our side. Unfortunately for the communists, these artillery weapons are far less useful on single targets than they are on formations, which renders them practically useless against our snipers. We set up positions regardless of the bombardment and begin picking them off. Unfortunately, we also have a slight mismatch, since I have specialized all of our Castellans into damaging formations as well, and the Iron Dragon is not happy about our incursions. The enemy lord begins bullying us while our bullets bounce pitifully off his scales. The enemy infantry are getting knocked around like an Irish housewife, but Zhao Ming is all the while doing a dangerous amount of damage. Unfortunately for Zhao Ming, he gets a little too close to Zatan, who nets him, and with the infantry all wiped out, our snipers have nothing else to do but pepper him with explosive rounds which, once focused on a single target, manage to make quick work of the lead lizard. With the port city leveled, we take a turn or two to replenish before embarking on our sea quest. Sea as in capitalism. We depart from Cathay and head east to the luscious lands of Lustria. Unfortunately for us, the first thing we see when we arrive in South America is Chinese colonists living in a place called the Isle of the Crimson Skull. Enraged by this lack of diversity, we instantly declare war on Yuan Bo and raise the settlement, pulling an unwilling Murray Rothbard away from giving a lecture at the Isle of the Crimson Skull University. It turns out that this isle was once home to lizards, because the conquesting Cathayans are inhabiting some very unfamiliar architecture. We spread out and scale various parts of the walls, and although the defenders send some soldiers up to stop us, the majority of our snipers are able to begin shooting straight down into the skulls of very out-of-place peasants. Between Zulu's fire tornadoes and the Untouchables' endless rain of gunfire, this siege quickly plays out more like an execution by firing squad than an actual battle. After a short recreation of the most dangerous game, the city is ours, and then we burn it down. There is another capital settlement within arm's reach of the Crimson Skull called Spectazuma, which would normally be a great opportunity except that it is heavily defended by conquistadors. No matter, we simply raise the neighboring minor settlement, the Floating Pyramid, and hire our 9th Castellan, Ludwig von Mises. With the power of God and economics on our side, we attack. These South American humans are surprisingly well equipped with guns, cannons, and rockets, and they let us scale the walls uncontested, preferring a shootout to a melee. Unfortunately, this is absolutely not the correct strategy for them, since their artillery barely phases our stout attackers and their infantry in the streets below are trapped in a confined space, perfect for our pyromantic shenanigans. We are disturbed to find that Cathayan warriors are present and working to assist the Empire's huntsmen. The only reasonable conclusion from this crossover is that the Empire has stooped so low as to join the Communist International, and therefore must also be incinerated. Zulu was already halfway done by the time I even realized the Communist connection, so I guess I'll just check that one off. Under cover of an embarrassingly futile barrage of rockets, our street cleaners systematically eliminate every ounce of resistance from the city in a series of uncomfortably unequal skirmishes with completely unprepared defenders. Be it on the wall or in the streets, watching the Castellans rapidly send each enemy soldier one by one to oblivion is a very satisfying experience, and I strongly recommend you try doing this run for yourselves. When it starts to pay off, it pays off big. After uncovering Hans Hermann Hoppe torturing empiricists deep in the dungeons of Spectazuma, he tells us that it is time to obtain our special quest item, the Chaos Rune Shield. This complements our army composition significantly as we benefit from having a tanky commander, so it is an agreeable diversion. We have some allies in this quest battle, but we really don't care because there's a hill where we can LARP as D-Day reenactors. Greenskins and Skavens swarm in the oily pits below as our marksmen fire indiscriminately into the mass of escaped slaves. A few ogres and orcs make it up the hill, only to get rolled back down shortly after. Grimgor wants a crack at us anyway, apparently pissed off that we abandoned our normal starting position earlier in the campaign, and therefore avoided having to deal with his antics. Grimgor's second wave is composed mainly of the intimidating black orcs, but unfortunately the few who make it to us are simply not prepared for the conflagration we unleash upon them, and they retreat from the battle comically soon after arriving. We continue to fight the conquistadors as we head southeast. Apparently they're in South America looking for gold to try and restart the barter economy. We decide to eliminate them in the field rather than deal with them chasing us for the rest of our vacation in Brazil. We set up to engage the human expedition in a respectable line battle formation, but after realizing how that was going to end up, the contemptible enemy charges us and swarms our riflemen. Castellans are keen to show off their gun fu and happily oblige the swordsmen who assail them. Being surrounded turns out to be a major advantage for us as we fire bullets and fireballs alike in every direction and land every shot. Soon nothing is left of the expedition but a few stragglers running to meet their fates in the deep jungles. With them out of the way, we proceed to raise the monument of Izital and Talanxala, as we move south to find more interesting species to make extinct. We find another band of humans, only worth our attention because they're slightly different looking than the last and a little more smelly. We meet these LARPers in the field just like the last, hoping to stop them from pursuing us further into the jungle and avoid a future thorn in the side. For a few moments, the proud Bretonnian cavalry swarm us, weaving in and out with devastating charges. At least they would be devastating, except that our Castellans are super resistant to cavalry charges, making the charges completely futile. You won't be surprised to find out that while these swarming horsemen try to figure out why their charges aren't having the expected effect, our pyromancer cooks every single one of them in their heavy armor before they have the chance to flee. Maybe the zombie pirates from that one Disney movie will be around. They're bound to have something interesting and new to fight. We start heading east through massive jungles, but the Bretonnians are hot on our tail despite our preemptive strike. We knock over Talax along the way, and then get stopped at the Poxmarsh by some ornery lizards who heard we were bullying the locals. We spread out to fight our exciting new foes, really channeling Azeroth's Hemet Nessingwary. The cold-blooded masses charge our safari with a vengeance, and their resilient hides are made fully evident as their formations withstand a molten pummeling. We are able to keep many of our Castellans out of the melee by having our strongest agents in forward positions, congregating the enemy around us. This only lasts a short while, however, and soon we are truly in the thick of it. Mises is caught very far from the rest of our army and comes extremely close to dying. Zatan and Zulu do everything they can to get him out of the pickle, and he emerges with only 100 health points remaining. Mises manages to escape just barely as the rest of us tie down the lizards who would otherwise chase him down and finish him off. Shortly after, the lizards retreat, but remain largely intact. If we stay here long, we're sure to face a far worse outcome. With Poxmarsh out of the way, we use the underway to hop over to the Star Tower and burn it down. I've seen that star before, and I know better than to allow that to fester. This summons Bob Murphy, a natural chaos dwarf if I've ever seen one. This also infuriates the lizards, and we flee before they have time to corner us. We really wanted to take out the fuming serpent, but we'll have to come back for it. We hop over to smack the altar of the horned rat instead, where we save Saifeddin Amus from being sacrificed to the filthy Skaven god of taxation. While the lizards and Bretonnians struggle to find a way to catch up with us, we island hop using the underway, blast the fuming serpent, and now we are headed across the sea to Araby. Once we arrive in Araby, the Bretonnians and lizards pull up behind us, having followed us all the way from their homes in Lustria. They want a scrap to sort out some unfinished business, and we would prefer not to fight all three of their armies at once, so we attack the first army to land straight away. Meeting the Bretonnians on the dunes quickly devolves into a repeat of the last encounter we had. They hope that throwing big rocks at us will interfere with our aim, but they are sadly mistaken. Frustrated by their army's consistent inability to crack our nut, the general charges us and quickly finds themselves alone and at the wrong end of many crosshairs. Unsurprisingly, they reconsider. With them out of the way, another army arrives which we auto-resolve simply because they didn't earn the right to our undivided attention. However, the Lizardman army that arrives is far less easily dismissed. Because we are very injured, it becomes extremely difficult to win this battle without sustaining at least one fatality in our ranks, which is simply unacceptable. We take advantage of our natural resistance to fire damage and the small size of our men to hunker into a corner like cowering children. Correction, cowering children with guns. The enemy lord flies into the center of our deceptively vulnerable-looking posse and becomes the battle's first fatality almost instantly, which should have been the first red flag for our attackers. Underneath all the feathers, talons, scales, and claws, I cannot even see our heroes fighting for their lives. But Zulu cannot be squelched, and summons flames which warm the cold blood of the lizards a little too much, leaving only us alive on the dunes. Unfortunately, our heroic stand goes unrewarded as it seems that a fourth army has arrived to finish us off. Just when we believed that a major setback was on the horizon, Arkan the Black sends an army to clash with the amphibious landing party and completely rescues us. The Tomb Kings barely wait for us to arrive before they pounce on the invaders. We do what we can to provide fire support, but there's virtually no point as the ancient Egyptians curb stomp the bejesus out of the Brazilian Lizard League. We were planning on killing Arkan for some Castellan summoning points, but now I feel enmity towards them, so we're going to move on. In the center of the great desert lay a hill, atop which resides hideous ogres who seek to eat all those whom they can find wandering the desert. So we figured, why not go there and shoot them to death? The ogres are not as keen to run into our kill zone as our previous adversaries have been, forcing us to send Zatan all the way over to their formation and start kicking their shins before they even bother. He could destroy their catapults while he's over there, but they're so useless, Zatan returns to our forces instead. Ogres are used to being able to throw their weight around, but they are disturbed by our low centers of gravity and their inability to bully us. After a few too many obese corpses pile up, they choose the fate of many of their former victims, wandering the desert in fear. Hidden in one of the ogre's cages, we discover Karl Menger, our 13th Castellan. There's some humans nearby as well who were probably being bothered by the neighboring ogre populations. We travel to El Kalabad to claim our reward by razing the settlement and killing its entire population. Next, we raze the Black Tower of Arkan, which could almost be mistaken for the Black Pyramid of Nagash, since they're right next to each other, but no, that's for later. Rapons of Arc is here, someone whom I still have a beef with for helping to spread feminism to Alarielle in a previous video. Her Bretonnians are infesting the Tomb King ruins and are far better organized than their jungle counterparts. We hide our special operatives behind the wall as Zatan has a field day tormenting peasants on the inside. Once the enemy is sufficiently softened, they mount the battlements and unleash a storm of shots. A lengthy bloodbath plays out around the gate, claiming Rapons and neutralizing squads of serfs. Many other opponents would have surrendered by now, but the resolute Bretonnians challenge us to delve ever deeper into their fortress, refusing to give up. As we step down from the walls, squadrons of cavalry charge us, which we must wade through to get deeper. Unfortunately for them, our army is now approaching critical mass and simply puts out too much firepower. Realizing this, they finally throw in the towel. Having obliterated our pals' former digs, Friedrich Hayek shows up to reclaim his Nobel Prize, which was kept as treasure in the Dark Tower's vaults. Our end goal is in sight, but we're not ready to tackle it just yet, since we're 4 agents short. We're buddies with Archon and we can't fight the Black Pyramid yet, so we need to get our Tomb King's terminating fix in by invading Khemri. Feeling aggressive, our Castellans charge headfirst onto the walls and get straight to the potshots. The enemy army are sitting in a perfect kill zone, and their ranged counterattacks might as well be marshmallow-tipped toothpicks. Waves of admittedly stylish skeleton warriors queue up to retake the walls and are roasted to charcoal while they stand around waiting for their turn. Unfortunately, the unmolested riflemen are simply too potent, and each shot blasts crowds of skeletons to clouds of bone meal, returning the ruins to their proper and quiet state. In the ruins of Khemri, we find Mage, creating some badass indie games. Now, we're ready to approach the final battle. We only have a few more races to crush and a few more Castellans to recruit. Of course, it wouldn't be a Total Warhammer campaign without the literal apocalypse interfering with our plans, and sure enough, the vampire counts initiate their own edition of the end times just as we started to get comfortable. We head south to meet Manfred von Karstein and his rotting retinues, and fulfill their desires for a personalized doomsday. Chasing the undead from ancient ruins is definitely the motif of spending time in Araby, and lo, the skeletal hordes of the vampire apocalypse have crammed their dusty bones into the pyramids, just like the Tomb Kings would have done if they weren't super dead. At this point in the campaign, our soldiers are too elite to waste time strategizing. We're here to enact the will of economics. We set up a firing squad outside of the main gate, and the mindless hordes follow Zatan right into the firing line. Capitalizing on our momentum, we follow the retreating ghouls back into the city and disperse the defenders left on the walls. Half of our forces take up position on a hill overlooking the battlements from the outside, which turns out to be an unspeakably devastating disadvantage to the defenders, as it allows us to unleash hell without ever entering the city. Shortly after, another ruin is returned to quiescence. By raising Kassabar, we unlock Milton Friedman, who arrives sliding down a pile of pencils. Milton empowers us with globalization to import cannonballs from our home in Tsar, which we can then drop on people's heads during battle. We're so powerful at this point that the bombardment ability is purely for style. We would not be doing the Chaos Dwarves justice to feature them in 2 campaigns without taking the opportunity to dunk on their backwards cousins. So we look for some dwarven settlements, and lo, Carreg Orad is just around the corner. We head there, leaving the vampires to nurse their wounds and find some other neighborhood to stink up. Carreg Orad is just a straight-up, good old-fashioned black powder brouhaha. Unfortunately for the magically inhibited and culturally inadequate dwarves of ordinary means, they're at a major disadvantage. What can I say? I mean, even I knew what to expect when a nearly full stack of leveled Castellans shows up on your doorstep. Make no mistake, we're just here to have a good time clowning on fools now. Days of narrow victories are behind us. David Friedman was mistaken for being a dwarf until we realized he was making some sort of insane rant about utilitarianism. We say fuck it and hand him a rifle. We just need to finish off a few more minor settlements, so we blast Agrul Migdal, and on the way to Gor Gazan, some gutter snipe wounds Captain Morgan, the bastard. Now, that doesn't stop us though, and soon Gor Gazan is dust. Angry enemy armies are giving chase, so that we're forced to hop across the Nile Delta and blow up Alexandria. Zandri. This provides us with our final Castellan, Eugen von Bohm-Baver. He arrived last purely because I can't pronounce his name. While we await the return of Captain Morgan from his stay at the hospital, we figure that we'll go bully the champions of Khorne who are living just around the corner. Normally, these fearsome-looking warriors of blood and skulls are an intimidating force to be reckoned with. This makes watching them foolishly charge into our designated unaliving area particularly gleeful. They realize what thousands of others have realized by now, and try their luck fleeing into the Badlands rather than face us in combat. Unfortunately, we decide to give chase and enjoy a little more safari larping as we hunt them all down in the dunes. Captain Morgan returns just in time for our push on the Black Pyramid, and we are excited to finally wrap up this challenge with a victory of overwhelming power. Can you believe that I originally expected this video to be 15 minutes long? I really gotta work on that. The Black Pyramid is better defended than anything we had besieged thus far, with layers of defense augmented with artillery and barriers. Our first task is to secure the walls, getting out of the range of their defensive outer towers and initiating our own attacks into the soft interior of the citadel. Choosing to conserve our strength, Zulu softens up the enemy with spells while our forces wait outside, protected by the tall outer walls. Soon, Zatan charges in on his own, bolstered by his natural regenerative abilities. Screaming Skull catapults bombard our commander, but do little if any damage. Zatan combats the powerful Ushabti and cracks their Masonic limbs off like celery sticks. Capitalizing on Zatan's disorienting damage, some of our heroes man the walls and begin unleashing a furious salvo. Finally wise to our war of attrition, the defenders sally out and ambush Zulu, MRH, Bardin, and Der Kralt before they manage to climb the walls. However, this is too little too late, and the majority of our Castellans are on the walls already, ensuring a thorough and equal redistribution of their ammunition supplies amongst the lower classes. The outermost ring of the citadel is now in our control, and our forces have sustained virtually no damage. However, the next ring of defenses remain undaunted and continue to engage with us at range. Our forces split in half, with one group heading into the lower streets to meet the masked skeletons there, and the other taking up a position further along the wall to begin skirmishing with the next defensive installations. After clearing the streets and softening up the inner walls of the defenders, we make a concerted charge to reach the interior of the Black Pyramid City. The enemy assaults us from all sides, but gunpowder proves an effective answer to all obstacles. While Zatan fights his way to the central control point, Zulu leads a charge across a bridge and into one of the enemy's supporting artillery installations. With both of those control points falling into our hands, the remaining undead, leaderless and now nearly surrounded, lose hope and simply crumble to dust before us. With the Black Pyramid in our control, we officially end the challenge, and without changing the goalposts along the way even. I hope you guys give it a try, and tell me what you think in the comments if you do. I recognize that this setup isn't particularly balanced, and by the end of the campaign you start to get quite a bit busted. But I really enjoy the starting out struggle, and hopefully if this interests you, then you'll have an enjoyable time as well. Remember to check out the exclusive Praximus sign-up code and get a large bonus crate of premium vehicles, decorative items, and other stuff. I'll catch you out there on the field of battle. Just a few quick announcements for the Praximites. This video took over a month to produce due to an exciting development. Our team is growing. We've got some new faces helping us here, and I'm very optimistic about the quality and quantity of future uploads. Now, time to thank my patrons for their support. As always, not only for myself, but for the whole community who get to benefit from their selflessness. Thank you guys for making this possible. In the members category, we have Arc Monarch, Dan Campbell, Eric B. Elasic, N. Payne, Quake Riley, Shadow Singer, Space Drake, and Toxic Mask. On the helpers category, we have Maxwell Hopkins, Rogue VR, Rollout123, Selvalis, and Thorkel the Tall.